Have you ever wondered why two Christians can do exactly the same thing before God and yet experience completely different outcomes? This is the story of David Adeyemi and Samuel Okoro. Both men lived in Lagos, Nigeria. Both loved Jesus. Both were active members of the New Covenant Assembly. Both were known among their friends as men who feared God. Both worked for large companies. Both were respected in their workplaces. And both would eventually face the same test, but their story would end differently. David Adeyemi worked as a senior accountant officer for one of the largest construction companies in Lagos. At 38 years old, he had built a reputation for himself. His colleagues trusted him, management respected him, and at home, his wife Esther and their two children depended on his income. Life was not luxurious, but it was stable. Everything seems to be moving in the right direction. Then one afternoon, David received a call from his department manager. "David, can you come to the conference room?" Nothing about the request seemed unusual. Meeting happened all the time, but this meeting would change everything. When David entered the room, three senior managers were already waiting. A file was placed before him. One of the managers opened it and pointed to several financial records. "We need these figures adjusted." David looked carefully at the document. The figures did not match the actual records. The numbers had been altered. The changes would help the company secure a major contract. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then one manager broke the silence. "Everybody involved has already agreed." Another added, "This is how business works." David felt uncomfortable. He knew exactly what they were asking him to do, and he knew it was wrong. Politely, he pushed the file back. "I'm sorry, I can't approve this." The room became quiet. One manager laughed, another shook his head. A third looked directly into David's eyes. "Think carefully, this could affect your future." But David had already made his decision. "I cannot do it." The meeting ended. But from that day forward, everything changed. Life in the office became uncomfortable. Some colleagues stopped speaking to him. Certain meetings suddenly took place without him. The atmosphere around him changed. But David chose to focus on his work and move on. For a while, it seemed the issue had died. Then, one Monday morning, everything changed. David was called into an emergency meeting. When he entered the room, representatives from Human Resources, Internal Audit, and senior management were waiting. Five sat on the table. The head of Internal Audit opened it. "David, can you explain these transactions?" David looked at the document. His heart nearly stopped. Several financial entries had been altered. Large sums of money had been moved between two accounts without authorization. What shocked him most was the system record attached to the report. According to the company's computer's log, the changes had been made from his workstation. His workstation? David stared at the screen. This can't be right, but the evidence seemed clear. Unknown to him, someone had accessed his workstation after he left office, but proving that would be almost impossible. Over the following weeks, an investigation was launched. David explained everything. He insisted he had not made the changes. He pleaded with the management to look deeper, but every report pointed back to his computer terminal. Every piece of evidence appeared to tell the same story. Eventually, the management reached a conclusion. David was found responsible for gross misconduct and breach of company policy. On a Thursday afternoon, after 7 years of loyal service, he was handed the termination letter. As he walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box filled with personal belongings, one thought kept running through his mind. "I obeyed God. I refused to compromise. So how did I end up here?" As he walked out of the company's gate carrying a small cardboard box, one question echoed in his heart. "Lord, did I make the wrong choice?" At home that evening, he sat quietly in his living room. His wife sat beside him. Neither of them knew what the future would look like. Months passed, applications, interviews, rejections, financial prayer, sleepless night. Yet, despite everything, David remained faithful to God. Now, let me introduce you to another man. His name was Samuel Okoro. Samuel lived in Lagos. Like David, He loved Jesus. He was also a devoted member of New Covenant Assembly. In fact, David and Samuel attended the same church. They worshipped under the same pastor. They listened to the same sermons. They believed the same Bible. And unknown to Samuel, he was about to face the same test David had faced. Samuel worked as a finance manager for a large logistics company in Lagos. He had worked there for several years and was known as a man of integrity. One afternoon, Samuel noticed irregularities in several companies' records. At first, he assumed it was an error, but as he looked deeper, he discovered something troubling. Large sums of money were disappearing. Transactions were being hidden, records were being altered. A small group of employees had been manipulating companies' accounts for months. Management had not yet discovered what was happening. A few days later, Samuel was approached. One of the employees invited him to a private meeting after work. At first, the conversation seemed normal. Then the real reason became clear. They wanted Samuel to join them. They explained how the scheme worked. They told him everyone involved was making extra money. They promised him his own share. One of them even laughed and said, "Samuel, this is once in a lifetime opportunity. Don't be the only one left behind." For a moment, Samuel sat quietly. The money being discussed was more than he could earn in several years. Nobody had been caught. Nobody suspected anything. Everything appeared saved. But deep inside, Samuel knew exactly what was happening, and he knew it was wrong. Politely but firmly, he refused, and he would not compromise his faith. Like David, he chose integrity. Over the following months, some co-workers mocked him, others called him foolish. A few warned him that refusing to cooperate would damage his future in the company. But Samuel remained firm. Then something unexpected happened. The company's headquarters announced a full internal audit. No one saw it coming. Auditors arrived from the head office. Years of financial records were reviewed. Emails were examined. Reports were scrutinized. As the audit progressed, panic spread among those involved in the fraud. The people who had once laughed at Samuel suddenly became nervous. Then the findings were released. The fraud was exposed. The missing funds were traced. The altered records were uncovered. And the employees responsible were immediately dismissed. But something else happened. As management reviewed the investigation, they noticed one named Samuel Okoro, not because he was involved, but because he consistently refused to participate. Every auditing findings pointed to the same conclusion. While others compromised, Samuel maintained his integrity. While others chased quick money, Samuel remained honest. Management took notice. Within weeks, Samuel received a promotion. His salary increased, his responsibility increased, and his reputation within the company grew stronger than ever. For Samuel, it felt like a miracle. A few days later, after a midweek service at New Covenant Assembly, Samuel approached Pastor Emmanuel. "Pastor, God has done something wonderful." The pastor smiled. "What happened, Samuel?" Samuel shared everything: the prayer, the temptation, the audit, the dismissal, and finally the promotion. When he finished speaking, Pastor Emmanuel rejoiced with him. It was a wonderful testimony. God has indeed been faithful. Then Samuel said something that seemed perfectly reasonable. "Pastor, I would love to share this testimony with the church on Sunday to let them know that when a man walks in the way of the Lord, when a man stands in the path of righteousness, God can use that opportunity to lift him." Pastor Emmanuel smiled. Of course. But as Samuel walked away, the pastor's smile slowly faded, because another name immediately came to mind: David Adeyemi, a faithful member of the same church, a man who had faced the same temptation, a man who had also chosen integrity, a man who had also refused to compromise. Yet, David's story had ended very differently. Samuel obeyed God and was promoted. David obeyed God and lost his job. Samuel was celebrated. David was still struggling to find work. Pastor Emmanuel sat quietly in his office. His mind was filled with questions. If Samuel stood before the church and shared his testimony, people would celebrate, and rightly so. But what message would the congregation hear? Would they hear that God rewards integrity, or would they mistakenly conclude that every act of obedience guarantees promotion? And what about David? Was his story not also a testimony? Was there not something powerful about the man who lost everything and still remained faithful to God? The more the pastor thought about it, the more difficult the decision became. Should Samuel share his testimony alone? Should David also share his experience? Should the church hear only the story of promotion? Or should they hear the story of promotion and the story of perseverance side by side? After all, both men stood for God. Both men chose integrity. Both men honored Christ. Yet their outcomes were completely different. So now the question is yours. If you were Pastor Emmanuel, what would you do? Would you only invite Samuel to share his testimony? Would you invite both Samuel and David to share their testimony? Or would you handle this situation differently? Let us know what you will do and why. Thank you, and God bless you for watching. Don't forget to like, to share, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.